kind of thing you could have in front of you that's, I thought sort of like cylinder. And I almost like this idea of pure white, because then you have to look at all the variations of colors within the white. Could be interesting. But then this was gifted to me by a student several years ago, and I love this. Ooh, yeah, Nora. I like the shape of that one too.
Let's see, Nora. Oh, of course, Steelers.
You're a big Steelers fan? I have a friend who's a big Steelers fan too, out here.
Okay, I gotta look here. Oh.
Here,
I gotta grab.
Switch my camera. I just have some canvas paper. I've been liking painting on this with the acrylic. And it's nice with the oils too.
Do you wet that first?
I do. If I do a wash,
okay,
I would have, which I probably will. Today, I would start with a wash, which would be watered down quite a bit. Now, Olga, what kind of paints are you using?
I'm using colored pencils.
Ooh, colored pencil. Nice. That's awesome. I love colored pencil.
They're my media of travel choice.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Have you played around with
case and everything?
Oh, it's so cute. Oh, I love that.
I have like those kitty colored pencils that you get at the store. You roll them up. Don't need sharpening.
Guess what? I have that same set and I love them.
Yeah.
I actually have that same one. They're great.
Never need to sharpen them.
The twistable.
Twistable.
Yeah.
And then I have, my friend made me like some little notebooks that
oh, I love that. That's so fun.
that I put in my little case that I made. So
yeah,
I'm a sewer, so
that's great. I have done a little bit of sewing, but it's something I want to get back into.
I've done an excessive amount, so
Excessive.
yeah. Yeah, my room would scare you, so you know like that lady they talk about where they filled up a whole church with all her quilts. Yeah, that's who I am. So
well, the thing I love about like crafters and sewers and artists and creative people in general is like we kind of get this idea of you need certain supplies and materials, and you're a collector in a sense of something, I feel like.
yeah.
My room might scare you too. I don't know.
On the edge of being a hoarder, so.
I'm just taping this off, just giving myself a little border. Yeah, I've definitely been inspired lately by this idea of kind of quick painting, well, not quick necessarily, super quick, but kind of smaller paintings of simple objects that you're looking at from observation. Is thinking of how drawing from observation is such a great way to improve your skills, and I think so is painting, you know? Okay, let's see. Canvas paper, my palette paper. Yeah, I'm trying to decide which mug I want to use.
I'll show you mine I just pulled out.
Ooh, yeah, let me see. I'm going to spotlight your video, make it bigger. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That's too cute.
I love that. That's great. recently I was going on Pinterest and looking at like different mug shelves, like those little cubbies, and each cubby you can put a different mug in. I thought that would be kind of cool to have up on the wall. I've got some empty wall space I need to figure out what to do with, so. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe I will go with the white one. I think it'll be fun to just play around with the white, and then I'll try the other one. So I am going to start with a wash, which again, just to kind of, I know you guys are probably like a little bit of a broken record sometimes, but I just always like to reiterate the importance of why even do a wash. And it is to put down a middle value so you're not painting on white. And also, especially for acrylic, and I mean even oils as well, you're starting to build up your layers. And painting is all about layering. And so is colored pencil. Lots of layers are great.
Jennifer, my view is of a wall. Did your camera shift?
It's of a wall?
Yeah. Oh, who have we got here? Oh, it's Lee. It's Lee's wall for some reason.
Oh, here we go.
All right, we'll try this again.
I was like, did something happen and I didn't know?
There, I've got Lee.
Yes, I disappeared for a moment.
Oh, I thought I had my video spot on the spotlight. Lee's fun to look at though. She's rocking her stripes, which I love. I've got stripes on today too, actually.
Woo.
Where's my color wheel?
Okay.
All right, so I just, and again with a wash, I'm just using like an angled flat. I just pull some, I'm using a yellow wash, just because I'm kind of playing around with that lately. I like the bright underneath. And then I just do a coat over my entire page. And you can, of course, sketch in pencil first. And this honestly with colored pencil too, you know, sometimes I will sketch with pencil and sometimes I sketch with the medium I'm using. So draw just directly with the color pencil, draw directly with the paint. So it's like whatever your preference is totally fine. Okay. With a wash too, you can choose to work wet on wet, meaning you just keep working even though this is wet. And what's going to happen then is, you know, some of your wash is going to get blended in with your first kind of layers and then your colors are sort of playing together. Or you can let things dry and then start painting. You know, it's totally up to you with what you want to do. I typically find because acrylic dries so fast, by the time I get my paint ready, it's usually mostly dry. And I am going to sketch just with my paintbrush. Let's see, play around with some of these angled flat brushes I have today. Been trying to branch out on like using different brushes that maybe I normally wouldn't use during different parts of a painting, just to kind of see how that can change it up a little bit. Let's see. Okay, just pull some brushes out. All right, I am going to, but when you're sketching or underpainting, you could call it underpainting, you can underpaint or draw with other colors than what you just see. You know, when you're looking at something from observation, you know, especially like a mug, which tends to be sort of shiny, have a reflective-ish surface to some extent, you are not just looking at one flat color. You're looking at lots of different colors. So with an underpainting, sometimes I think it's fun to just totally use like a totally different color, make it really bright. Sometimes I'll do a neutral color, like a burnt sienna or a burnt umber. So, you know, you can play around. I think it's just fun to try different things. So the more you're willing to experiment and try things, the more you're going to learn and figure out what you want to repeat. So I'm going to go complimentary today, and I'm going to sketch with or underpaint with a violet. I'm going experimental today. Why not? We're going to try it. And then I'm going to sketch my mug, underpaint with violet, and then I'm going to start bringing the white back on top of the underpainting. Yeah, it's a little tricky to know where to place this. I could also do, let's see. That might be a little better. And, you know, as always, your art goals, you know, think about how you want things to look. I mean, do you want things to be more realistic? Do you want things stylized? Sort of a combination? When I'm like underpainting too and not sketching with pencil, I don't worry. It's not like you're drawing for a drawing when you're drawing with your paintbrush. It's almost just kind of a loose starting point. So I just don't, if I make a mistake, I just kind of paint over top of it. I'm just kind of looking at the basic shape to get that form. I like to get kind of the basic form in first. Then I'll put in like the handle. And you know, when I'm sketching too, it's like if things end up going off my page a little bit, I just kind of let that happen. You know, sometimes things look kind of interesting cropped somewhat. So, you know, I don't get too stressed out with my proportions at this point. If I was planning a bigger painting, I would kind of lay it out ahead of time and plan out my size, which I didn't totally do here. And two, with underpainting, I'm basically just kind of looking at lights and darks at this point. You can underpaint with one color, or you could just choose to kind of sketch and then start blocking in with other colors. But I'm just gonna lay in just a little bit of kind of loose value. Proportionally, I wish like my mug was maybe scooched up a little bit, but I'm not gonna worry about that too much because I can always trim this up later. You can choose if you want to put like a little ground or something in. I mean, it's okay obviously to make things up too. I think, you know, don't be afraid to try unexpected colors sometimes. I actually once heard from an art teacher in the district I work in. She's like worked in this district forever, like veteran teacher. She thinks like purple is the answer to everything. Like if your color's not mixing the right way, put a little bit of purple in it and it'll probably fix it. And it's been funny because there's been a few times I've actually tried that and like purple has helped me. So I don't know if it's always the answer, but it's funny. I have turned to purple in times that I didn't think I would. So maybe that's why I'm playing with it now a little bit. And I'd say, you know, with the strokes you make, don't be afraid to try different things too, because you're painting and you can cover things up and you can go over top of them. And even with colored pencil, you know, I think it's one of those things that you can play with colors and lightly layer colors over top, almost in a way that you can paint. All right. Okay, so now that I've got this kind of loose, super loose underpainting sketch done, I'm going to start pulling out some of my other colors that I want to use. And as always with, you know, when you're painting, just think about, I always think about, you know, wet on wet versus wet on dry, like what you want to dry up a little bit before you layer more paint on top versus what you want to sort of be wet on wet and blended. So I'm always kind of thinking about those types of things as I'm painting. But the next kind of phase that I'm going to go into is what I call the block in phase, where I'm just going to kind of loosely block in values as I see them. I tend to like to work dark to light, but that's not always an exact recipe that I necessarily follow. And I think that's, you know, the point of painting is you can be loose, you can be expressive. Don't worry about going in like such a specific order, but just kind of generally speaking, I think that's a good way to approach it. So I'm putting some different blues down. You know, you kind of want to think about the warmness and the coolness that you're seeing too of your colors. Okay. And sometimes too, I think limiting your color palette a little bit is nice. You don't have to go too crazy with tons and tons of colors. Let's see. I may do a little bit of a background too, but I think I'm actually going to go ahead and start blocking in first. Let's see, I'm going to, here while we're working as well, just turn on a little light background music for us. Sometimes that's nice to have a little. Let's see. Just let me know if it's too loud for anyone. Okay. So yeah, when you're painting with white, you kind of have to pick a color to mix in for your dark value, which is what I'm using some of these blues for. You can also bring a little gray into it. And when I'm blocking in, I always say it's okay. I tell my high school students that it's okay if it looks like a third grader painted it at this point. You are literally just looking for darks, mediums, and lights and kind of painting the shapes that you see. This is that part where you have to like trick the whole left brain, right brain thing that we've kind of been talking about a little bit, where you're kind of tricking your left brain a little bit, because your left brain wants to identify everything you're painting. Like me, this is a white coffee mug. But what I want to do is I want to use my right brain, and I'm just looking for shapes. And the way that you kind of choose to paint and apply your brush strokes, that's where you can have some, creative freedom. But the point's the same, as you're looking for values, and how you choose to paint them is totally up to you. But I like to start with those darks and then work my way to the lights. And like I said, it's not a perfect recipe. I hop around a little bit. And I'm doing something a little different where I'm like holding this mug, which is not something I would normally do, but so a lot of the values that I'm painting are actually my own reflection that I'm seeing in the mug from me holding it. But I mean, it's like, that's really what art is about. It's about looking and seeing and interpreting what you see. And you get to choose.
I didn't get that. Could you try
how
again?
Realistic. Oops. My Siri keeps going off. You get to choose, those decisions, like I said, how realistic you want this to be versus how expressive or stylized. And I think the best way to figure out what you like is by painting a ton. Because the more you paint, the more you're going to figure out what you like and what you don't, what you want to repeat and what you don't. And trying lots of different subject matter, I think, is great too. But simple objects, you're just going to learn so much from a simple object. And when you have logos and faces, it's fun to interpret those different ways. That's been kind of my goal for this year for making art is I'm very interested in kind of stylized versions of like reality. I like things to look like the object, but I like them to be expressive in a way. So I'm definitely interested in experimenting more with that in my own art. So I'm hopping around a little bit, moving from, dark darks to a little bit lighter. Like I said, it's not a perfect recipe, because the longer you look, the more you're going to see. So you may look and be like, oh, there's a dark I didn't notice before, so I need to go back to that dark. That's totally fine. And when it comes to blending, at this point in time, don't worry about blending or adding details, because what you're going to find is a lot of blending is an illusion. It's not actually necessarily blending, although sometimes it is. during this phase, I'm just worrying about putting these darks where I see them. Sometimes I like to add just like a little bit of water to my brush with my acrylic, or I've got a little bit of retarder medium here just to keep the paint wet longer. And again, if you paint an area that you didn't mean to, you can always let an area dry and go back to it. Nothing has to be set in stone. And regardless if you like a more realistic style or a more stylized version, value still plays an important part in showing a form. And sometimes I like the block in to be extra loose because you can put all those fine details over top of it, which is what brings it together. And I mean, block-ins are generally relatively quick, but take as much time as you need to. It's like I said, I think the longer you look at something, the more you start to see. The other thing too about like edges, some of your background can help you clean things up if there's something not quite right. Yeah, it's amazing how much of a white mug actually doesn't look that white. Again, with acrylic, when you've got wet with wet paint, you'll notice that you can pull some of the existing paint into your wet paint. Gouache is that way too. And most paint is that way. All right, now I'm ready to start popping in some of my lighter values. But I want this to just dry a little bit. So as this is drying, I'm just gonna kind of paint some of the background a little bit. Use some burnt umber. And maybe just kind of, I'm gonna keep the background fairly neutral. Maybe some gray. A bigger brush. Yeah, your background can be used to, of course, help you define things or make things pop. I think this gray will be nice once I start adding some whites, actual highlights into my mug here. so getting some gray for this background. Use it to kind of refine anything I need to on the shape. Otherwise, I don't worry too much about that. It's fine. Now, it'll definitely pop more too once I get my, like I said, my highlights into there. And if I want to add more detail to a background or anything later, I can as well. I think sometimes it's nice to just get some paint on the page. Getting close to start adding some lighter values. And just because I'm starting to add lighter values, it doesn't mean I can't go back to darker values. All right. White, I feel like, is the paint you go through the most with acrylic. I use so much white. And again, I think playing with brush stroke is really fun to do and just figure out the different ways you can move your paintbrush to get different effects. Also, how thin your paint is versus how thick it is. I also think it's really important to occasionally step back from your work too, because remember, you are so up close looking at it that sometimes you need a different perspective and you just need to step back from it and look at it from a different viewpoint. That's something I forget to do, and I think it's really important. And I don't mind too if some of my existing wet paint mixes in with my new layers just a little bit. In fact, I think that's kind of nice. I think it unifies a painting. But it's something that you can, play around with too. If you like that, if you don't like that, you can let layers dry before adding more layers. Mixing a little more than I want, but that's okay. All right, make some more white. It's time to get out my big jar. All right, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've got some more white. Just pull that down. Again, a little bit of blue might be kind of nice in some of these lighter values. Because again, I want to kind of work dark to light. Build up my layers. Remember, you can kind of squint too if you're having trouble differentiating some of the values from other ones. You can kind of squint, and that will help a little bit. And when you're painting from direct observation, like in my opinion, the value is more important than the specific color. And that's how I think it's easier to change colors of things, because you can make things any color you want or make them bolder than how you actually see it or more playful or whatever you want to do. But it's the value that you're really looking at. And so squinting kind of helps, especially because we can't obviously just turn this black and white when we're looking at a real object or holding a real object.
One moment. I didn't get that. Could you try again?
And again, if you don't like seeing some of the texture of your paintbrush, just try putting a little bit of water on it or medium. And that'll help it flow a little bit smoother. But you can play with those brush strokes and what you like to see. And now it's basically just kind of a little, do need a little bit more paint in this middle part here a minute. But then it's kind of just a game of looking at the lights and the darks, looking at the different textures you see, and kind of continuing to add layers until, honestly, you feel like it's finished. Like I said, I think the longer you look, the more you're going to see. If you're in a room where your light can change because of the window, you're going to continue to see different things as the light changes. We just keep building up layers. It's really the key. It's just, you just kind of keep adding layers, playing with your brush strokes, looking for lights, looking for darks. Like I said, it's okay to go back and forth a little bit. It's not a perfect recipe. You know, as far as your underpainting goes, if you did do an underpainting, you can kind of decide how much of that you want to stay visible. You have the option to completely cover it up. You have the option to let little bits of it poke out. That's kind of totally up to you. But now's too a time to kind of look at the shape of things, your overall form, make sure you like what that looks like. You can play around with different textures. Like I said, different brushes, moving them around different ways, letting portions dry versus not is all going to get you different effects. And honestly, I think it's just what you think looks good. It's your painting. There's so many styles out there. Now I can start building up some of these whites too, back on these. As we start to build up more lights and more darks, we get the sense of this form. The more we add, the more it starts to look like it has depth, where we're creating this illusion of space. Yeah, it's like the more I look, the more I see. So you can go back to colors you need. Continue to add layers. And then typically, the more I get to finishing, or the closer I get to finishing, I should say, I'm starting to maybe use some smaller brushes, thinking about little lines, little details. That's the kind of stuff that kind of sits on top, the little stuff. So it doesn't make sense to paint that first because it'd get covered. So we can add that in last. It's like the finishing touches. And you get to kind of see everything start to come together. And you know, I just try different things with my brushes, tap my brush, use it on its side, add a little water to it. All these different things will get you different looks. And remember, if you're painting with acrylic or watercolor or oil, you can glaze. Glazing is a great way to subtly change colors because you add just a little bit of water to your paint, and then you can lightly bring it on top of existing paint and just kind of blend it in. And it just kind of lightly changes things. It's not so dramatic, not so opaque. That can be fun to play with. You know, you can decide if you want kind of things to be kind of refined and blended, or if you like things to kind of be loose and you see tons of texture on things. Again, that's the individual part to everyone's style. The process of painting is the same, building up layers, looking for values, but what makes it unique to you is all those little decisions you make. What brush to use, how to let your stroke show, if it's blended or not. all that can just kind of come together, whatever you think looks good. Start brightening this up. And lightening and darkening things can happen gradually. Your first layer doesn't always need to be as bright or as light as it needs to be. You can start to work it up. Again, some of my shadows are kind of interesting because I'm holding the mug. A lot of times I don't hold the objects I paint. I kind of sit them there, but I thought this would be kind of fun to try. Let's see. I'm going to get, I know we only have a few minutes left. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, some paintings I do definitely I finish over multiple sessions, and some paintings I like them to just be studies, and okay, I spent an hour or X amount of time working on it and I'm finished with it now. Whatever I learned in that time, it was beneficial and I can apply it to something else. So however you want to approach, you know, when you're painting or making art, it's okay to view something as this is just practice, because practice is how we have to do anything to get better at. A little bit of purple into this. Now, I always like to say too, if you use a color in one spot, I try to repeat it at least once. That helps things look more unified. Even if it's just a small repetition somewhere. I mean, truthfully, I could probably spend, I don't know, maybe like maybe not another full hour, but I could spend a little bit more time on this if I wanted to and just kind of clean things up a little bit, play with my brush strokes a little bit more. Or I could kind of take what I've learned here and say, okay, this is finished. I've learned some stuff that I could apply the next time I want to paint a mug or paint something that's white. So yeah, we're going to talk about finishing artwork up and signing art. I believe I have that next week actually. So we'll talk more about that, but yeah, deciding when you're finished is always a challenge, or can be a challenge, I should say. But I could definitely play around some more with this, like I said, add some more value, continue to build up my layers, let things dry, come back into this if I wanted to. But I kind of told myself that I was going to, these little paintings we do on Saturday, just kind of leave them as they are. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull off my tape for now. Just kind of see.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. Like I said, I think I could spend some more time on it. My background really only has the one layer on top of my wash. I could add more to it, but I think I learned some things and got to play around a little bit. So yeah, I'm happy with it.